This episode is brought to you by Amazon Prime. There's nothing sweeter than baking cookies during the holidays. With Prime, I get all my ingredients delivered right to my door, fast and free, no last-minute store trips needed. And of course, I blast my favorite holiday playlist on Amazon Music. It's the ultimate soundtrack for creating unforgettable memories. From streaming to shopping, it's on Prime. Visit Amazon.com/Prime to get more out of whatever you're into.
70,000 people are here, and Bob Dylan is the reason for it.
Inspired by their true story.
For anyone who's going to hold your attention on a stage, you have to kind of be a freak.
Are you a freak?
Hope so.
And starring Timothée Chalamet as Bob Dylan. He defied everyone.
Turn it down!
Play loud!
To change everything.
Make some noise, BD.
Timothée Chalamet, Edward Norton, Elle Fanning, Monica Barbaro. A complete unknown. Only in theaters Christmas Day. Rated R. Under 17, not admitted without parent.
This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. The holidays mean more travel, more shopping, more time online, and more personal info in places that could expose you to identity theft. That's why LifeLock monitors millions of data points every second. If your identity is stolen, their US-based restoration specialist will fix it, guaranteed or your money back. Get more holiday fun and less holiday worry with LifeLock. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
Hello and welcome back to 1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast, and our very upbeat match report following Forest's home win on Saturday night under the City Ground lights against Aston Villa. It was looking like being a very boring match report. I was dreading it, I can't lie, and I think the Maradona himself was as well. But Forest turned it into life as Aston Villa took the lead late on. But Forest, 87th minute, were 1-0 down. From the 94th minute, they were 2-1 up and got the victory thanks to Nikola Milenkovic and Anthony Elanga's goals. I'm your host, George Edwards. I was at the City Ground, and the Maradona of the Midlands is alongside me, who was watching at home. A very good way to spend your Saturday night, Maradona. Much better than the other dribble that was on TV, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm sure, yeah. I believe that the Strictly Come Dancing final was on, but I gave that swerve and watched Super Reds come away with another famous victory. It's like London buses, isn't it? They could wait 25 years for one, and 2 or 3 come along at once. It's it's fun times.
Definitely, yeah. So we're going to look at the match, the key facts, the lineups, and everything else. Then we'll take a break, and then we've got a few other things to look at. So let's start with the lineup. Then there was one change from the side that beat Manchester United away, I believe, and it was one that I was a bit sceptical of, I can't lie. It was Nico Dominguez who replaced Jota Silva. So it was Matt Sells in goal, Aina, Murillo, Milenkovic, and Williams, the back three, with Alex Moreno obviously suspended. But he was still on the pitch dancing at full time, I believe. So maybe his allegiances have been switched. Midfield, Anderson, Yates and Gibbs-White, with Dominguez, Hudson-Odoi and Chris Wood up front. Now, as I mentioned, my worry was Dominguez in there. He's a very good performer this season, been one of the better players. But Elliot Anderson, for me, has really shone in midfield. And I was thinking, I really hope he's in there. But Nuno obviously found a way to play Dominguez out wide. And it was quite clear to see, Maradona, wasn't it, that Ola was following John McGinn round, which meant Dominguez slotted in well. So did you have any criticisms of the team, and were they proven wrong by the end?
No criticisms. I was a little bit surprised that we went for that formation, that selection at home. I always think at home we want to go for it a bit more, and then especially when we've got Jota, Elanga and Sosa now as well, 3 different options to play on the wide right. It seemed a bit strange, and I think that was borne out a little bit for me in the first half because Dominguez kept on coming inside, and really nothing went down that right hand side in an attacking sense. I think we lacked pace as well. I was hoping pre-match that we'd see the Villa high line that they like to do, just sort of standing on halfway, and see how Elanga would destroy that. But unfortunately, he didn't start the game. I know you've been a little bit critical of Elanga in recent match reports. I remember the Arsenal one was you're quite harsh on him. I thought, but yeah, why is he undroppable? Why?
Was that me? Was it?
But I think so. And then and Hudson. But I agree with you. Hudson-Odoi and Elanga have been hit and miss last few weeks, and I was hoping to see maybe Sosa start a game at some point. As well as Jota sort of got his starting place last couple of weeks. So I was hoping that maybe one of those two would start. But you've got to trust Nuno. He seems to know what he's doing, doesn't he, these days? You can't really criticise him. He keeps on getting results. But yeah, I think whoever plays with Aina ends up looking like a better player. So when he was on the left-hand side, I think you've made this point as well. He made Callum Hudson-Odoi look a bit better. And when he's on the right-hand side with Elanga, he makes him look better. Yeah. I think he's just a really good player. But didn't see much of him from an attacking point of view either, as you say, he's looking after John McGinn. But we'll get on to the introduction of Elanga later on.
Yes, quite an introduction it was. Yeah, I was the same, really. I was a bit sceptical about it, but I think Nuno has earned enough credit and enough trust in the fans that we've got to stick with him and put our faith in him. And given that we're now, spoiler alert, I'm sure you know, we're now fourth in the league, ahead of the Manchester derby that's currently playing as we're talking. So I think we've certainly got to trust him. And in terms of, you said Forest didn't really have much of a right-hand side. For me, it wasn't that much of an issue. It was clear because the whole play, I mean, I sit in the Brian Clough stand, everything was coming down that side. But we had Anderson, we had Gibbs, we had Hudson-Odoi, Williams as well, I thought Williams had one of his better halves in the first half as well, all finding passes to each other, close together. And we were still finding ways to pounce on Villa. I thought we struggled in the first 5 minutes. I think the Villa formation maybe caught us out because Digne and Cash had a lot of space early on. But once we combated that, I was quite impressed. And actually, particularly from the sort of 20 to 30 minute mark, I remember Ryan Yates had a shot from the edge of the box, didn't he, that flew over. And he just hesitated when he got that. If he'd have just lashed onto it and hit it first time, I think he'd have got it on target, but he overthought it. Then we had a chance for Wood, didn't we, as Williams crossed and Wood nodded back. Dominguez, if he'd have gambled, probably would have been in there. And as you mentioned, if that was Elanga or Jota, one of them maybe would have been there to score it. But in terms of the first half, I think Forest would be happy with it, 0-0 at half time. What was it like watching at home? Were you impressed with what you were seeing?
Yeah, similarly to you, I thought Villa started the game well, but we actually had the first sort of bit of a chance when Nico Williams got a cross in, sort of about 3 minutes in. That was the first bit of danger and the rare bit of danger. The most noteworthy thing for me was the injury to Ryan Yates. He seemed to roll on his ankle after about a quarter of an hour, and he carried on for a couple of minutes and went down. And on TV they showed him taking a painkiller and just carrying on, being a double hard so. I don't know how many other players would do that. So that's what maybe the most noteworthy thing. And then, as you say, the cross from Nico Williams to what was it, Nico Williams? I can't remember now. The sort of header back, but yeah, I think it was Nico Williams when Chris Wood headed it across goal. Could have very easily been a repeat of the goal at Old Trafford. It was just it could have, if it just looped and curved a little bit the other way, it may have gone in. Can't really think of any chances that Villa created that was sort of serious one. Matty Cash was a constant danger. I think that whoever plays on the right hand side for the opposition is always going to have a bit of a fun time because Callum Hudson-Odoi doesn't like tracking back too much, and so it leaves a left back, whoever it is, exposed. When he first came to the club last season, I didn't think him and Elanga could play in the same team together because I thought we'd never be solid enough. I think we'd always get exploited of either one or the other. So for Nuno to have created a team where they can both play is all credit to him. And down that right hand side came the other sort of big controversial moment of the half. On about 34 minutes, it was when Villa thought they should have had a penalty for a tug by Anderson on Rodgers. What do you think? At the game, I thought, when I saw it at first sight, I thought, "Oh, you silly boy, that's a penalty." So I was pleasantly surprised when it wasn't given. What do you think?
Yeah, I think Rodgers was a thorn in Forest's side the whole game, wasn't he? And Anderson was almost put on him, much like Aina was put on McGinn. And I think Rodgers, certainly Aina won the battle against McGinn, but I think Rodgers throughout the 90 minutes did win the battle against Anderson. You could see his confidence, his stature, his confidence on the ball was, very impressive. And I think he was probably Villa's most threatening player in terms of in that midfield area. And yeah, the thing about it is, I think it's a foul, but Anderson is fouled first because there's a hand from Rodgers who pulls Anderson's shirt. It's halfway up his top, and then Anderson gives him one back. So I think the referee's thinking, well, if I give one, I'm going to give the other. So let it go, give the goal kick, and I think he got it right. But you had the courtesy of replays, so were your thoughts the same, or were you worried?
Yeah, I think. Yeah, well, initial viewing, I was worried, but then when they showed the replay, it clearly showed that Rodgers was pulling Anderson's shirt almost off his back at one point. So I was fairly confident that as confident as you can be with VAR, that if they were going to give the foul on Rodgers, they had to give the foul leading up to it. And as it was the same phase of play, they couldn't give the penalty. I think the explanation was wrong, though, that they put out about it being a momentary pull, not being of any consequence. Because that's the part that led to controversy. If they said Rodgers committed a foul to be in the position in the first place, so a penalty can't be given, nobody would have questioned it. There would be no controversy, and Villa would have had no complaints. It's because they said, well, the tug wasn't really enough to make him fall down. And it was really a pretty good, strong pull by Anderson. It was enough to pull him down. That's, I think, the mistake they made. But they're always going to get something wrong. I suppose under the pressure of live TV and the whole world watching them, I suppose it's difficult to get your words straight first time. I think they rushed it out a little bit, the explanation, but hey ho, it works out for us. I'm not complaining.
You'd rather them get the communication wrong than the decision. So at least they got one of them right, and the correct one. Another player I want to mention about the first half was Murillo. I thought that first half, his confidence on the ball and the ability to find a player was clear. I'm pretty sure it was him that set Williams down the left-hand side for that cross that we mentioned. And I think one of them didn't come off and Villa broke, and we managed to defend it. But he was just awesome. And second half, he didn't have as much joy finding passes into midfield because Villa sort of closed that area a bit more. But Murillo was shining in that first half for me.
Well, yeah, I don't know if you spotted it in the ground, but he actually went down with an injury as well. Towards the end of the half, he was feeling his ankle as well. I've got a feeling that may have led to the Villa goal. He was just a yard away from Duran when we talk about the goal. I think maybe he was feeling it because it's very rare for him to make a mistake, and he kept Duran very quiet in that first half. He's clearly a very talented player. I saw him score against Leipzig in midweek, and I thought, what's he doing shooting from there? Oh, he scored. So he's about 30 yards. So he's clearly a very talented player. And I think that maybe that little injury picked up in the first half maybe contributed to a couple of things in the second half.
Yeah, so it was 0-0 at half-time. And I saw a bit of negativity. There was a bit in our group chat. I won't mention names, but there was a bit of negativity about the performance. But I was quite heartened by it because I know Forest have excelled this season. But the fact that they can have a very decent fight with a team like Villa, take them on in their own way and batter with them really gave me confidence. And if any team was looking like winning it, I think it was going to be Forest. Now, in terms of the start to the second half, I don't think it was brilliant. I think Villa did start the better as they did in the first half. Forest failed to find Gibbs-White and Anderson sort of close to each other like they did. So do you think Forest's injuries in terms of Murillo and Yates influenced that, or was it just a sort of hangover from the first half?
Well, I think we dominated more or less the middle portion of the first half. It was just at the beginning of the match, and just before half time, Villa came into it. We're hanging on a bit for half time. I was glad to hear the half time whistle, and they came firing out. Yeah, maybe it's just a thing that Villa do. Maybe Emery gets into them at half time, so they come out all guns blazing. The injuries, I think that had to have a slight effect on them because Yates and Murillo both eventually went off, but they did really well to last as long as they did. But even though they weren't creating much at that point, even though they were a slightly better and more energetic team, they didn't create much and it didn't last very long. I was a little bit surprised that Villa only made one change to their starting line. midweek as well. I believe Tyrone Mings was due to start, but picked up an injury in the warm-up.
Yeah.
But that would only meant two changes as well. So I was a little bit surprised. I think the lack of energy eventually caught up with them. We were sort of, most of that second half, up until the Villa goal at least, we were in control. And I think after that, weathering that initial storm, we weren't really creating clear-cut chances apart from maybe the one that led to what's already been described as the best save ever, save of the century from Emilio Martinez. I don't know, what was your view from the ground? Did it look as spectacular live in the stadium, or
I
just
thought it was
more routine from there? Yes,
yeah.
I thought it was in. Yeah. Well, I was up.
I was celebrating, and I was thinking, is it one of those? Because Villa played Sheffield United, didn't they? And it went behind the post, and I was thinking, is goal line technology malfunctioning again? And I didn't really see Dominguez get a header on it. It was obviously very scrambled in the penalty area. So I just said the ball go towards goal, go in, and then suddenly not be there. I didn't even see the keeper, really. And then the replay came up on the TV screens, and everybody was like, wow, how has he managed to do that? To go, it's not like he was going that way. He was going the other way, going forward, and he gets a hand behind him. And how he didn't fall and break his arm or something the way that he dived. Yeah, it was an incredible save. And that actually, I think, was the turning point in the game, wasn't it? Because it really sparked the game into life from both standing points. Villa scored quickly after it, didn't they? And we'll touch on the guy now. We've brought it up a few times. Yeah. It was nicely worked, wasn't it? Their play was a bit quick to get round us. 3 quick passes that got it into the net, and then a wonderful header from John Duran. You mentioned Mourinho's sort of turn of pace, but when a guy gets a header like that, there's not so much you can do really, unless the keeper stood right on the line.
Yeah, the ball was just sort of dinked up to him by John McGinn. So for him to generate that sort of power. He's about 12 yards out to really sort of flash it past Matt Sells. I was a little bit disappointed initially, but because I thought, well, the keeper's got to save that really. But it was such a powerful header. It was pretty unstoppable. I think maybe if it'd been started to the side of him, maybe it would have been a bit easier for him to save. I'm waving my hand at George here, just demonstrating one thing, because it was just right above him. I think that maybe that split second longer it takes your hand to go from the say 2:00 position to the midday position would have let the goal in. But
it's a shame we've not got video content, isn't it?
Yeah, I'll be doing my goalkeeping classes down on the Forest every Monday night if anybody wants to come and join. It was at that point. I thought Villa would probably see it out because they're an expert team and sort of managing the game, and I thought there'd be lots of little fouls they'd get here and there, and just waste the time. But with Martinez in goal, the king of S-housery as he is, I thought they're going to waste at least a good quarter of an hour on goal kicks alone. But credit to Forest. We made a few subs after the goal. First one was a double sub, wasn't it? 68 minutes. The 2 players we've been talking about being injured in the first half, Yates and Murillo, were replaced by Jota Silva and Brazilian centre-half Morato. And so we've been changing it around a bit there. And eventually, actually, probably... Well, for that sort of period of time, Villa were more or less in charge, I think. What do you think, watching it in the ground with it? Could you feel a comeback coming at that point?
I think it's always on the cards with Forest this season. But the thing about the two sides is they play very similar football, because you look at Aston Villa, and what struck me the most was when we take goal kicks, normally we play it short and the team press you straight away, whereas Forest always let the team try and play out. But Villa were doing that to us. And it was almost like, hang on a minute, we're playing a very similar team to us. And Villa taking the lead completely fitted into their game plan because they could just do that, sit off, let us try and attack them. I think the substitutes, obviously, a lot of people in the ground were a bit confused by them, particularly Morato coming on. I think, obviously, the injuries played to it. But also, taking Yates out of midfield, obviously, Nuno was going for it in a sense. He had to. But taking Yates out of midfield lost that physicality. So maybe he wanted the presence, the taller presence of Morato from corners, from headers. to compete. And yeah, you can't fault the substitutions from Nuno, and they really brought Forest back into the game. And the turning point was the save, as we mentioned. But Forest, they weren't desperate. That's the thing about it. You can see a team in that position get desperate, start playing it long, start running out of ideas, playing it out of play. But Forest, they just kept plugging away. We're confident in their ability to get things done, to create chances, because they naturally create chances with the football they play, with the spaces they get into. And that was proven by the disallowed goal. It was 81 minutes, wasn't it? And it was, honestly, that is such a fantastic goal. The way Forest work it from deep on the left wing, all the way across to the edge of the box, then further, then wide, then into the net. And for Elanga's breath to be offside for it to be ruled out is ridiculous, because that was one of the most amazing goals that I've ever seen Forest score. It reminds me of that Fulham goal we scored a few years ago in the Championship, when Lewis Grabban finished it off from back to front. It wasn't quite that, but it was a shame that goal didn't count, Maradona.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. So just clarified that Elanga came on for Dominguez about 77 minutes, and you could more or less see the effects straight away. We suddenly had a little bit more width on the right hand side, a bit more danger, and that all important pace, which allowed Elanga to sort of break the lines there, beat the Villa. Well, we thought beat the Villa offside trap and create a perfect goal for Chris Wood. I agree with that. The VAR decision took a good 4 minutes.
It was a disgrace
for them to rule it offside. It was a disgrace. If you're taking that long, you cannot be sure that you've got it right, because the technology is just not accurate enough. It's just not advanced enough for them to freeze a frame and say, "Oh, that's definitely him, X millimeters further beyond the defender." So, in a technical aspect, they were wrong. They shouldn't have done that. But from just a general point, I've said this ever since VAR came on. I can't remember a single football fan complaining of the offside the way it's being interpreted the last few years, where we used to say level is on, and if you're not sure, the attacker gets the benefit of the doubt. Yeah. Nobody would complain if they just carried on doing that. Nobody had even dreamt that they'd suddenly invent these lines to go on the pitch. I remember the first time it came on. I think it was a Leeds, a cup match, Tottenham against Leeds, I think, at Wembley, something like that. And the day they said, when they started doing it, I said, "Why are you doing that? It's not broken." Nobody complains if somebody's elbows on the other side of a player. We're all happy with if it's level and the attacker's slightly ahead. That's fine. The attacker gets the advantage. We want to see more goals. So for them to create this rod for their own back is ridiculous. And we were very, very, very unlucky for that goal to be ruled out. As you say, it was a beautiful goal. Past Forest teams would have let their heads go down after that point, but not this one, George.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I said. It could have gone one or two ways. That could have been Forest licking their wounds and thinking, "Here we go again. It's not going to be our day." But that goal gave them the confidence exactly that it should have, that we're into Villa. We've got them exactly where we want them, and we're going to keep plugging away. And even the ball in, you look at the wall. Obviously, Forest scored from a corner that was recycled, but you look at the way we run the corner. It was Hudson-Odoi wide, brilliant ball in towards Chris Wood. I mean, it's a perfect ball because it's really undefendable. It was sort of just over Torres, so he couldn't really head it clear. The keeper couldn't get it because of the pace of the ball, and Wood, I'm sure, would have headed it in. You can see him on the replays heading it, and I'm sure that would have gone in the back of the net. So Torres obviously heads it out for a corner. And then Forest, I mean, what made me laugh, this is sort of a bit unrelated. I was watching Match of the Day last night, and I hear Wolves have conceded 20 set-piece goals already this season. Now, Forest conceded, 24 last season, and it felt like we were doing it all the time. So for Wolves to be on 20 is outrageous. But the progression this season, that we've gone from that to what we are now in terms of having Milenkovic in the box really does help. But the way that Forest had the confidence to recycle it, brilliant ball in from Morgan again, and what a header from Milenkovic. And I turned to Grandad when that goal went in, once I'd calmed down, and I said, "We're going to win this here." Did you have that same confidence, Maradona?
No, I'll be honest with you. just because time was running out. If there'd been like another 20 minutes or so, I definitely would have thought, yes, we're going to win it. But because we were going into injury time, I didn't think so. And the odd thing about this strange, weird thing that football is, earlier in the half, Martinez produces a save of the century. That goal, it was a fairly routine save, and he chucked it in the net. He chipped in the net for us. I think he got a little bit scared that he's going to bash into the post, and that just put him off a little bit. Yeah, their bad luck was our good luck for a change, and we were level with a grandstand finish set up, George.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And what I was listening to the radio on the way home, and Nuno said, didn't he, that at that point I was trying to get the players to calm down, but I'm glad they didn't listen to me because, like I said, and my mentality was Forest are going to win this. That was the team's mentality, and I think that's what sets us apart this season because we're new to this. There's no fear, there's no objectivity. Forest are just here, we're thriving, and we've got the confidence to do anything. So Forest just had that mindset, and I think it's shown by the goal because it's attacked down the left, isn't it? Hudson-Odoi loses it quite lethargically, as he often does, and he wasn't really showing much desire to win the ball back, as he doesn't from defensive situations. But Anderson is on Matty Cash like a rash, and Matty Cash, you can just see, he just wants to get out of there. Villa just wants to get out of there with a point, leave the City ground and move on. But Forest aren't done. Anderson isn't done. He harries the ball off him. Maybe a bit of contention, but I think that's just the physicality of the game, particularly with some of the things that the referee let go. And then Anderson charges into the box. Elanga finishes it off. What a moment. What a goal. And it didn't surprise me at all, Maradona. Were you jumping around your living room at that point?
I did more yeahs than I normally do. I know as I've matured in my years, I know I'm normally sufficed with one yeah, but this time I did multiple yeahs, and it was. I mean, again, once I saw the replay, I thought, oh, they're going to rule this off by VAR are going to get involved because that's clearly a foul on Matty Cash. But we got a little bit of luck there. So, it could have easily been given as a foul, but thankfully it wasn't. And then after that, it was good play. And the ball across and the finish, Anthony Elanga, he gave quite a good interview post-match where he showed a lot of self-awareness in saying that he's not played brilliantly well all season. He's not creating enough, not scoring enough goals. So it's good to know that he is aware of that. You sometimes get players who sort of blinkers on, think, I'm not doing anything wrong. It's the other players. It's the manager not playing me right. But for him to show that maturity, that gave me some comfort to think that, he is going to become the player we all think he can be because he's going to keep on working hard on it. And it felt really, really joyous at the end of the match. I mean, the injury time seemed to go on forever, though. They added but it was 7 to begin with, and it went on for another minute and a half. So you're never quite that confident, but it was really a really enjoyable night. And as you say, they're playing with no expectations and no weight of having to survive this season, and so that gives you a freedom to play. Last couple of seasons, every single point was so vital just to stay up. Now we're in a bonus situation where nobody expects us to be 3rd, 4th, 5th, but as long as we can stay there, we might as well keep on playing. And we've got good players. I look at the other teams and whoever we play. There's not often I think, oh, he'd be good in our team. I'd take most of our players against most of the opposition players. Week in, week out. There's hardly, we've got a good squad. We've not had Danilo all season. We've not had Sangari all season. Taiwo's not really played all season. So these are still 3 quality players who really can come in at some point. I mean, even if not push us on, just keep the momentum going. So just enjoy it. I've said it to our little symposium on our group chat. Just enjoy this season because it's probably going to be the best season we'll have this decade. Because even if we sort of qualify for Europe next season, it's going to be tough for us. Every team finds it tough once they qualify for Europe, especially if it's Thursday night. It's just the next league season is not going to be as good. So just enjoy it this year. Just have fun and don't get too down if you lose some matches. Let's not criticise too much. And let's just see where it takes us. You never know.
Yeah, it's very nice to have such positivity at the minute. Just on Elanga, I saw on Instagram as well that since he signed, only Cole Palmer has had more goal contributions in the Premier League as an under-21 player than Elanga. And I mean, Palmer's on 50 and Elanga's on 17, so there is levels to it. But he's the type of player that could use this goal, this performance, this impact that he's had to make him really push on and come back into life. We see that with Hudson-Odoi, he often scores 3 and 3 and then doesn't score for 10 games. Elanga's that sort of player that lives off confidence and backing from the manager. And I think at the minute that performance will give him both of that. And it's nice to have everybody buying in. I mean, I'm going to talk about the squad after the break, but it's nice to have everybody buying into what Nuno is saying. Nobody's sulking, everybody coming off the bench, fresh, ready to go. And what won Forest the game for me was the mindset. Because as we mentioned throughout the podcast, it was a very even game on the pitch. Both teams cancelling each other out. Both teams with very similar styles as well. But Forest won that because of their mentality, because they didn't have as much weight on their shoulders as Aston Villa did, not as much riding on it, and because they've got that freedom and that confidence in themselves that the sky is the limit and really they can just push on and anything's achievable. So at full time at the City Ground, it was Nottingham Forest 2, Aston Villa 1. Woo! We're going to take a break, get a view from the opposition and talk about a lot more positivity after this.
Hi, it's Rich here, and thanks, as always, for listening to 1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast. You may have heard that Billy Davies is going to be doing a gig. Yes, he is coming to the Albert Hall in Nottingham in February to talk about his time at Nottingham Forest, and he will be joined by a few familiar faces, such as Wes Morgan, Lee Camp, and Terry the Kitman. Well, I just want to let you know that we are soon going to have an exclusive giveaway and more details relating to this event. So keep tuned in to 1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast.
Hey, it's Austin James. Yes, I'm living with diabetes, but it doesn't have to define me. Thanks to the Freestyle Libre 3 Plus sensor, I get real-time glucose readings throughout the day. The Freestyle Libre 3 Plus sensor is small and easy to wear, giving me the freedom to focus on my life as a parent and a musician. Now this is progress. You can get a free sensor at freestylelibre.us.
Offer available for people who qualify. Visit myfreestyle.us to see all terms and conditions. Certain exclusions apply. Data on file, Abbott Diabetes Care. For prescription only. Safety info found at freestylelibre.us.
You're listening to 1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast.
Hey Rich and hey guys, this is Neil from For the Love of Paul McGrath, Aston Villa podcast, and I don't even know where to start. I think it's fair to say that you guys must be absolutely ecstatic and over the moon, being 1-0 down and coming back and scoring in the 87th minute and then, winning in the 92nd, I think it was, minute. You guys must be over the moon, having a fantastic season now, up into 4th place, a 3-point gap between the two clubs now. But as an Aston Villa fan, I'm pretty low after that game. The game itself, on a whole, I think up to John Duran's goal, maybe was a strange game. It was a weird game. It was a nothing game. It would have been a very forgetful game. The only thing that I would have remembered, I suppose, really was the tug back on Morgan Rogers that wasn't given. That was the only real talking point in the first half. But then the second half kind of comes to life, should I say. John Duran gets that goal, a brilliant header, and then Villa just don't look like a coherent team then after that. Nuno makes some good substitutions, bringing on Jota Silva, I thought was really good, brought in a lot more pace in the wings, and then obviously bringing on Anthony Elanga was a real shot in the arm for everybody on the Forest side. That pace on the wings was what I ended up doing Aston Villa. Villa didn't. Their substitutes came on, they didn't contribute at all. I wasn't disappointed with any of the substitutions that Aston Villa made. I thought they were the right ones to bring on. It was the right decision to bring on Amadou Onana, but that midfield kind of went very porous after Yuri Tielemans was taken out, and which I'm really surprised about, to be honest with you, because Onana is somebody that should be able to hold the line in there, and he wasn't. And then as Aston Villa's midfield got more porous with Forest's wingers that they brought on, they were able to pour down the left and down the right, and as you see, you got your goals from there. This is a tough loss for Aston Villa. Those players are going to take that one a small bit tougher than they would have taken maybe a 2-1 loss if Forest had scored their goals earlier in the game. But look, this is Premier League football, especially with Villa having European football. They're going to have to get back up off the ground again and see what comes for the coming year. Nottingham Forest are a real deal. They're the real deal. They're a really stout outfit. I absolutely love Murillo at the back. Just a defender I really like. I like Elliot Anderson, albeit There was questions maybe over what VAR looked at, whether that was a foul in the build-up to the goal. I like Elliot Anderson. I really like him as a player. And there's a couple of other players in the team, in that Forest team as well, that I really like. I think Forest are going to... the sustaining period for Forest will be into January. And if Forest are up and around the European positions, I think they're well worth their position of being in European football next year, come the end of this Premier League season. So I do wish you guys well, and I hope that we can figure out kind of the little mini kind of slump that we're in at the moment. I hope we can figure that one out, and maybe do one over Man City in the coming weeks as well. But thanks very much for asking me for my opinion. Congratulations on the win, and I hope to talk to you again later on in the season.
Thanks, Neil. That's Neil from For the Love of Paul McGrath YouTube channel. Now, what I picked up from that was it's nice. From last season, I remember opposition fans coming on the podcast and going, "Oh yeah, we beat Forest, but they'll be all right. They've got enough to stay up." To properly being admired by the very decent Premier League fans and teams, and that's given me a lot of positivity. Let's talk about the squad then, because we mentioned it in the first half, and Nuno obviously had a plan, and his substitutions last season were a bit of a sticking point. I remember Brighton away, Luton away, they stick out for me as games where I felt like he lost us points for making defensive substitutions, and in games where we were really coasting. And obviously Forest, it's the other way around this time, we're chasing a game. But you look at the squad, the substitutions were all spot on. Willy Boly coming on for his first football since August, since he played 90 minutes against Newcastle. And I think he played 4 minutes, and he probably touched the ball the most in those 4 minutes. He was so ready. And that's what strikes me about this. Everybody that comes on is so ready. You look at Morata coming off the bench, straight away slots into it. Elanga, impact, setting up that disallowed goal within 4 minutes of coming on. Everybody's just so fresh and ready. And whatever Nuno needs, he can look behind him and think, I need a pacey winger, I've got one. I need a sturdy defender, I've got one. I need an energetic midfielder, I've got one. It's the strongest squad I've seen ever Forest have. And for you, Maradona, it must be up there with the strongest squads you've seen Forest have.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, in the old days, you used to have a strong 11, and the squads just weren't as big as they are now. So you only ever had initially 2 subs and 3 subs. So they didn't need that many players, really. They had maybe 16 players. And then the rest was sort of youth team players and what used to be called reserve team players. You've probably never heard of reserve team football, George. You used to have a whole league called the Pontins League. So you used to be able to go down and watch Forest play at the City Ground for free if you were a season ticket holder in the reserve league. And the players who couldn't get in that league were in the first team would play that every week. So, but yeah, it is a strong squad. The acquisitions we made in the summer have really pushed up the quality. Anderson and Milenkovic, to name but 2, and it was just, we've got nothing to fear. We're a strong squad, and you mentioned sort of defensive substitutions he made last year. He's got no need to do that this season. He can go for it. He can just go if we're losing, if we're drawing. There's no reason not to just go for the win. 3 points for a win. It's so much more than immeasurably valuable than just getting a point. So you might as well. We've got nothing to lose this season. We'll go for it. It's another tough game down at Brentford next week, but you never know. We might be able to win that one as well.
I'm loving this confidence, Maradona, and I really, really hope so. Something else I also noticed, and I was doing some research for the match report that I write for the Famous Club. There's a little plug for that. If you want to go and read more of my ramblings, is that it's the first time Forest have won from behind this season. Now, they've scored first in most games they've played, and of their 7 previous wins, 5 of them were 2-0, so obviously Forest scored first there. And the other 2, Leicester and Man United, Forest were only pegged back to level terms once, so they went 1-0 up, 1-1, and then went 3-1 up in those games. And when conceding first, it's only been 3 times. Forest had lost an aggregate of 7-0, and they'd only gained points from losing position once, which was against Brighton away, obviously 1-0 up, 2-1 down, back to 2-2. So that's something else ticked off Maradona. Is there anything else you can think Forest need to do this season?
Ooh, what do we need to do this? I think a good cup run. Then the FA Cup. Down in your back garden at Wembley Stadium there. Get us back down there and let's lift a trophy. Why not? Let's lift win the FA Cup this season, and then the Europa Conference next season, and win the league, and then next season after that, win the Champions League and the league, make it a double. And why not? We can do it. Come on.
Yeah, well, I very much hope so. Somebody replied to my Instagram story as well, and my friends, and said, I'm convinced Forest of 1979 to 80 are back. So based on your positivity, I think a lot of people are thinking that. Something else I also wanted to ask was, obviously fans are ecstatic about where we are in the league. Nuno obviously says, let's enjoy it, but doesn't acknowledge it. But should the players, because I saw Matt Sells on Instagram last night, and I don't really have an opinion on it. I wonder if you do. He put on his Instagram story a sort of picture of the table and Forest being in fourth. And it's not something you see often from players. So do you think the players can afford to look where they are and enjoy it, or should they buy more into the manager's mindset? Because I'm a bit on the fence about it.
No, I mean, the managers are always lying when they say they don't know where they are. They know exactly where they are. And they're enjoying it as much. You can't help, it's just a measure of how well you've done. So, I mean, it's coming up to Christmas. It's a good time to sort of take stock of the situation. It's the end of the year. You're sort of halfway through the season. And at this point, the table does not lie. If we're still up there in come turn of the new year, it's because we're a really good side, and it's a measure of how good we are and how well we've done. And the players have to sort of take a little bit of satisfaction from that, and pride as well. Otherwise, what's the point in playing? Yeah. If you're just going to be miserable all the time, there's plenty of chances to be miserable as a Forest player. So let's be happy when we're winning. Yeah, just to enjoy it. They're going to be going around town, and everybody's going to be coming up to them, being like really pally with them. I'm really happy with them. And I'm sure there's times in the past when players have had sort of just avoided going anywhere near the city centre because they know they're just going to get dogs abuse. So let them enjoy it. As long as they stay focused, I'm sure they have. There's no reason why they wouldn't do. They're only playing sort of one game a week for most of the season, so they've got plenty of time to enjoy it, enjoy the victory, have a cool down or have a massage, and then build up to the next week's game. And hopefully they'll do that. We'll be well prepared for Brentford.
Yes, definitely. That'll be a very tough test. But I looked at some of the teams that Brentford played, and I'm pretty sure we'll be the highest team that Brentford have played. So hopefully we can break their goal-scoring home duck. And they are liable to concede goals. And the win also means that Forest have the same record at home and away. So that's 14 points on the road, 14 points at home. And we all have thought this excelling away record, but Forest have now done it at home. And that shows their consistency that they are, and they found a way to beat teams in the league. Something else that obviously you mentioned the players getting an extra day off. Nuno said that in the press conference. But something Emery said as well was that we'll fight them for top 8. If you'd have said to a Forest fan before the season that we'll fight Forest for top 8, you'd have been laughed out of the room. And I just want to end with this, right? This is before the Manchester derby, okay, which is going on now, so it won't be quite correct. But after full time, Forest were 2 points behind Chelsea, 1 point behind Arsenal, 1 point ahead of Manchester City, 9 points ahead of Manchester United, 14 points ahead of Leicester, 16 points ahead of the relegation zone, and 28 points ahead of Derby County. What a good time it is to be a Forest fan,
Mario. That's brilliant. Yeah, just a measure of how well we've done. And enjoy it. I remember as a kid when the season finished third, at points we were top of the league. And I took photos of teletext off the TV, the Forest being top of the league, just for posterity. This is like real. We didn't have digital cameras then. These are like proper film photographs. So I think when it's like this, you can stare at the table for hours and hours and hours, and you don't get bored. And so I'm sure I'm not the only one. All the other Forest fans will be doing exactly the same thing, just staring at that league table and those beautiful numbers that add up to us being fourth or fifth. And just enjoy it.
Yes, absolutely. I did a very similar thing at Anfield away, and I'm sure many Forest fans did. When we were 1-0 up, I took a picture of the scoreboard because I thought, are we going to hold out, and when is this going to happen again? But this season, the memories just keep rolling in. And we'll leave it there. I hope you've enjoyed the podcast. It's a very positive one, apart from our little ramblings about VAR. And have a great week. I'm sure Forest's win has spurred you on. If you want to subscribe to the podcast or find places to listen to it, or find the social media, you can find all the links at the words 1865.football. We'll have Friday 5 later on in the week, and myself, Adam and Tom, I think we're all going to Brentford, so we'll have that in your feeds at the start of next week as well. Have a wonderful week, and come on, you European Reds.
podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
How do you feel when you switch to Geico and save on your car insurance? It's like going to work on one Thursday morning and thinking to yourself, just one more day until Friday. But then somebody in the elevator says, Happy Friday! Then you check your phone quickly and discover today is actually Friday. So yes, Happy Friday, random stranger in the elevator. Happy Friday indeed. Yep, switching and saving with Geico feels just like that. Get more with Geico.